This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, Tree of Life Synagogue, on CNN this morning explaining that he has gotten hate communications in response to being welcoming to President Trump in Pittsburgh today.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
The irony apparently lost on the left, or whoever is excoriating the rabbi for saying that he's my president, he's always welcome, right? I mean, he's the president, so he's my president. I'm an American citizen, so he's welcome. The same way that people welcomed President Obama amid the 14 mass shootings over which he presided during his term, and when he would show up on site to provide consolation. I mean, it's just remarkable. Speaking of hate, this congressional race in Chicago Metro, one of the key races really for Illinois, but also nationally if Republicans are going to maintain control of the House. Peter Roskam versus Sean Casten. This Sean Casten guy, it's remarkable to me that he's
made it this far.
As competitive as he is. Yeah, it's I can only chalk this up to people not understanding who this guy truly is, what he truly believes. You know, remember we had this discussion about Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz, 4 rules for life. You need someone to love, something to believe in, someone to believe in, I should say. For Lou Holtz, it's Jesus Christ. Something to do, and something to hope for. So we find out from Sean Casten, in no uncertain terms, repeatedly, that the someone that Sean Casten believes in is this virulent, hateful gay rights activist named Dan Savage, who has suggested things like a period of mandatory abortion.
He's denounced the Bible on several occasions.
Yeah. Here's a little compendium of Sean Casten and his philosophical North Star, Dan Savage.
In a recent Wall Street Journal article titled, "A House Majority by Any Means Necessary," journalist Kyle Peterson recounts the following.
While we walk, I toss out what seems like a throwaway question. Name one current leader who most inspires you. Mr. Casten picked Dan Savage, a sex columnist. What motivated that choice? He has this combination, Mr. Casten explains, of completely righteous indignation and an awesome sense of humor. He cites a contest Mr. Savage held in 2003 to name a graphic sex term after then-Senator Rick Santorum.
Sex columnist Dan Savage started a campaign to rename the word Santorum, and now the first 2 hits you get are about the filthiest sexual neologism possible.
When challenged about this bizarre choice, Casten reiterated his selection and added,
"But listen, the person I embraced, and I will stand to this day, is Dan Savage."
Let's examine the righteous indignation and sense of humor of Mr. Savage that Casten finds inspiring. Savage is famous for advocating violence against political rivals.
Carl Romanelli should be dragged behind a pickup truck until there's nothing left but the rope.
And even said,
"You Republicans are like Arafat."
Unfortunately, not exactly like him. I wish they were all dead.
Yeah, that's the civil discourse you're looking for. Are you suburbanites from Lake County down to Hinsdale? That's who you want to represent you?
He's a monster.
Somebody who is an ideological and, as it pertains to just sort of character, social graces, a fellow traveler of Dan Savage. Go to Dan Savage's Twitter page. You'll see a picture of a hand-drawn, GOP elephant symbol with the tongue up a hand-drawn girl's dress, the trunk up a hand-drawn girl's dress.
What?
He tries to be overtly grotesque and shocking so that he gets attention, much like Sean Casten. So Sean Casten definitely following in his footsteps. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Congressman Peter Roskam, Republican congressman from the 6th, to make his closing argument. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan and Amy, good to be on with you. Thanks for having me on.
Just the importance of Sean Casten's fealty to Dan Savage, at least ideologically and interpersonally. I mean, it's hard to, and you don't make a habit of running against third parties when you're facing off against a political opponent, but it's hard not to bring Dan Savage into this race, and Sean Casten has.
Yeah, Sean Casten has not only brought him in, but he's doubled down. So he's been given opportunities to repudiate that, and he doubled down on WTTW and said, no, the person I embrace, and this is after the revelations about who Dan Savage is. And this is really a pattern with Casten. In other words, this is the same Sean Casten who compared Donald Trump to Osama bin Laden. And then when he was asked about it again, he doubled down and said, what I said needed to be said. Or this is the same Sean Casten who described Republicans as the party of pedophiles, or Republican donors as morons, or making, just spewing conspiracy theories and nonsense. And if you read that Wall Street Journal article from a week ago, the reporters basically said, look, I came to the 6th District to do, I thought, an interesting piece about tax policy and health care in the suburbs. And then I sat down with Sean Casten, and I couldn't basically believe, I'm paraphrasing, the things that he was saying. And Casten said, and these are his own words, that he will use any means necessary to gain a House majority. That's a phrase that any reasonable person in this day and age should find jarring and shocking and completely off-putting and needs to be repudiated wholeheartedly.
The intersection between Malcolm X and Dan Savage gets even more interesting.
So you've been in tough fights before. I mean, I remember when you went against Tammy Duckworth. Are you concerned? Are you cautiously optimistic? How are you feeling with just a week out?
I'm very encouraged for where we are right now and what we're seeing on the ground. And in a lot of cases, I remember time was not Tammy Duckworth's friend in that campaign, and time is not Sean Casten's friend in this campaign, because the national discussion has now turned towards civility in the public square, and with Casten just embracing the politics of ridicule and embracing the politics of name calling and so forth, to the point where he was spouting before the Chicago Tribune editorial board the conspiracy theory that there were white power symbols that were being flashed during the Kavanaugh hearings, when that was absolutely debunked. So, look, the Daily Herald, when they editorialized in favor of my candidacy, they came out strongly for me, and they said, Sean Casten is not running the type of campaign that demonstrates that he's got any ability to work across the aisle.
But he does have the ability to generate a lot of campaign cash from D.C. As well as locally, apparently. And, how do you explain the fringe statements that he's made, the way that he conducts himself, and how competitive he is in this election?
So there's national money that's coming in. There's no question about it. And he's also chosen to align himself closely with Mike Madigan. And think about that. He entered into a joint fundraising agreement the third week in September with, of all people across the fruited plain, Michael J. Madigan. So Madigan's got the ability to direct a lot of money his way. There's national money that's coming in. I think when push comes to shove, the 6th District is going to say, we don't want this guy. We don't want somebody who's aligning himself with Michael Madigan, who's against a property tax freeze, who's embraced J.B. Pritzker's progressive income tax, wants no payroll tax limitation, wants a gas tax and a new carbon tax, and wants to take away all the tax benefits that we got under the new tax law. And I think when it all comes down to it, I think the 6th District says we're voting for Roskam to send us back because he reflects us. Casten repudiates us and doesn't reflect us.
Adriana Cohen, writing in the Boston Herald, had an interesting comment. She's sort of trying to follow Kanye West's lead. Kanye starting Blexit, blacks leaving the Democrat Party. She's trying to start a Wexit, women leaving the Democrat Party. And she writes that women, quote, should, quote, ought to acknowledge that the robust economy Trump, has unleashed in less than 2 years has created over 4 million new jobs, giving them, their daughters, aunts, and sisters what feminists have long fought for, independence. Is that part of your closing argument to suburban families as well?
Yeah, two things. Number one, look at where the economy is and the trajectory of it. Kasten simply makes the point, we have to thank Barack Obama for this. I mean, literally, that's the argument that he's made, which is just obtuse and out of touch with the reality of how robust the economy has become under this administration. And the other thing is, look, it's moms in our culture who are the guardians of civil discourse. It's moms who basically say, hey, you don't talk that way. I don't want to see you talking to your teacher that way. I don't want to see you talking to your classmate that way. And I think a lot of suburban moms are not happy with the way Sean Kasten is conducting himself.
Wow. So what final push? I know yesterday you had Senator Marco Rubio. You two had a joint
I believe
press
his name is Little Marco.
Oh, no, yeah. No. But I mean, why? And then the week before you had, Stephen Scalise was here.
We had Steve Scalise in, we had Marco Rubio in, and now it's, you guys know campaigns. It's now door-to-door work and get out the vote work. And look, you're either drained by a campaign or you're completely invigorated by it. And I am invigorated by campaigns. And this one in particular, just in closing, because this is about worldviews. This is about way beyond donkeys and elephants. This is not a shirts and skins thing. This is about how we view the world. And my point is, hey, we want an economy that is robust and dynamic and expansive. We want to be able to discuss things in the public square and not be demeaned and ridiculed. And that's the reflection that I am of this district. And my opponent is going a totally different direction. And I think the direction that he is prompting us to go says, hey, throw more rhetorical gasoline, call people more names, and make the square even more tumultuous than it already is.
Yeah, I'm all for calling politicians names, but I mean within the bounds. I'm all for ridicule and not treating politicians as ruling class types or our betters. But I mean, what Sean Kasten has said is disqualifying. When I say fringe, I mean fringe. This is not, he's a liar, he's a tax raiser, he's a spendthrift, the stuff that you hear, and then there's underlying evidence to make the argument. This is lunacy, what he's talking about. Trump is bin Laden, this Dan Savage character that he has identified as his intellectual North Star. I mean, people really need to look at this. You don't even have to get to disagreements about some of the substantive policy issues, as I've said on the show before. Sean Kasten has disqualified himself based on what he said. I don't care what he's done in his career.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's so many other things that as people are focusing in now and they're thinking, all right, what do we want this like? What do we want this culture to be like? On November 7th when we all wake up? And do we want Kasten basically out there saying, hey, here's how you win. This is what you do. You call the President of the United States like a mass terrorist, and you just add more rhetorical gasoline on the whole thing. I don't think so. I think we can do a lot better than that. And it's time for Sean Kasten to be shown the door by the voters.
All right. He is Peter Roskam, Congressman from the 6th. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Great to be on.
Thank you. And
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. He joined us on our turnkey.pro answer